lived in the late 1800s, and he's called the father of sociology. He's associated with the functionalist paradigm that we'll be talking about, and this is where he believes that all social structures serve a function, and that social structures actually maintain order and stability in society. He also talks about the collective conscience, which is the totality of beliefs and sentiments common to average citizens of the same society. Collective conscience is almost like culture, and we all end up subscribing to that. Collective conscience goes on after people die and can pass from generation to generation. So people enter society and they are shaped by society, and when they leave, society goes on. He also talks about solidarity, that people have a connectedness to a group, and the tighter the group, the more solidarity exists, the more common bonds, and the more cohesion. And when people don't have this, when people are disconnected from a group, or there's a loose group structure, people can suffer from anomie, which is a sense of normlessness. We'll talk a little bit more about each of these ideas in the following slides to make this clear. Think of the pressure that you get from society. I have this little cartoon here where you see the little devil and angel on the shoulders of a person. And that's this moral conscience that we get from the outside. That's actually society talking to you and telling you what you can do and what you can't do, what's acceptable behavior and what's not acceptable behavior. And Durkheim sees this external pressure exerting power over the individual, and then we end up internalizing that. We can do it in many ways. For religion is one of the ways that Durkheim spends a lot of time talking about. But even think of how your parents end up influencing you, how your peers end up influencing you, how all of the people in society and culture end up influencing your behaviors. Other cultures have different types of behaviors that are acceptable that we might not see as acceptable here, and vice versa. This is what he talks about, society being on the outside, exerting its pressure on us. And this for Durkheim is the collective conscious. Durkheim is famous for his analysis of society changing from a mechanic society to an organic society. For him, mechanic society is based on small, simple society. I have a picture of hunter-gatherer society here. Think of how tight and cohesive that society is. Durkheim was talking about before the Industrial Revolution, when people lived on the land and weren't working in factories. They were in small, close-knit groups. They had a strong collective conscience, which means that everybody was out watching for everybody else, and people had to really conform to that society's culture and norms, because if they didn't, they would be punished severely. In fact, if you didn't subscribe, you can actually be kicked out of the community. So there was more coercive control over the individual. People had less freedom, and they were more similar. It was a very homogenous group. Think of a small town in USA where everybody knows everybody's business, and everybody kind of has to act a certain way, or else you get ostracized by the community. So for him, that's mechanic solidarity, and that's before life got more complex from the Industrial Revolution on in modern society. Durkheim explains what's happening in society as it moves towards modernity. So he calls this organic solidarity, and I have a picture here of a large city. An organic society is large and complex. It has a complex division of labor. This means that there's increasing specialization. There's the farmer that grows the wheat. There's the baker that bakes the bread. There's the truck driver that takes the bread to market. There's the grocer that sells the bread, and on and on. And all of these different specializations of labor are interdependent upon each other. And he makes this analogy to the body. And this is where he comes up with the term organic, because all of the different organs in the body work together to make the body a whole, and each of those parts are interdependent upon each other. And so a healthy society is much like a healthy body, where all the different parts work well together. And of course, a more complex society is a more loose-knit society, and therefore it has a weak collective conscience, which means that not everybody knows everybody, and there's not as much pressure to conform. So there's less regulation and less coercion to follow the norms and be like everybody else. and therefore there's more freedom. Durkheim had a positive outlook on what was happening with modernity. Even though we didn't have as much solidarity and those strong social bonds, we had the benefit of having more freedom in a modern society.